the NBA has a new meta. Now, when it comes to the NBA, man, they've had a lot of fluctuations, and I think around the time I've been growing up watching NBA, I've been watching NBA for a long time. The way that the league has changed, I feel like I grew up in a time where it's changed the most consistently throughout each decade, throughout each year, throughout each era that I lived through. Now, when you go back and look at the history of the NBA, it's really always kind of done this all the way back since like the Wilt Bill Russell days, the Kareem days, the Magic Bird days, the MJ days, to even the 2000s, the 2010s. Then you had the Curry times, then you had kind of recently. When it comes to all these different things, it was a different style of play. Whether people wanted to play fast, whether people wanted to play slow, whether you couldn't play zone, whether you couldn't double team, whether you could do all these different things. And then you have now where you have all these analytical teams and teams trying to play kind of similar ways, where you have teams trying to win possessions, whether it's from turnovers like the OKC Thunder, or people trying to win the possession battles like rebounding like their Houston Rockets. But then you really have two teams in terms of the way they are building their teams that are changing the game. Prime example is the Thunder and the Spurs. And the new meta that I'm going to be discussing is the elimination of the wings. Now, when it comes to both these teams, the way that their teams are really constructed, they're pretty much constructed with a lot of guards and bigs. And they kind of just skip over the wings. Now, the Spurs, on the other hand, they still just this year recently drafted a wing, as in Carter Bryant. But he hasn't really even got a lot of PT. When you look at their team, a lot of the times they close with 4 guards and 1 big being Wemby. And even before Wemby got healthy, it was really a lot of 3 guard, maybe even 2 big lineups, 4 guards, 1 big lineup with Cornet. It's been a lot of lineups where they pretty much at all times have 4 advantage creators, which being guards, and then they'll be out there with bigs. Then you look at the Thunder to start the season, they kind of, for a time now, for really the last 3 years, have really just went all in on this guard lineup with 2 bigs. And when you think about the picks that they've picked, when you think they may need wings, they went with Case and Wallace. J-Dub is like the most wing guy they got, but even he's a 6'5", more so guard, 2 guard, but he just has a super long wingspan and actually a pretty sturdy body that can make him be able to play up in size and stuff like that in certain situations. But you could even argue they run a lot of 4 guard lineups where Jada will play the 4 and you have like Chet or Hartenstein at the 5. But they also do run that 3 guard double big lineup that is pretty popular. Now, I do think in recent years, I think because of the Jokic stuff and Embiid stuff for a couple years, a lot of teams were starting to do 2 bigs. But I think people are like, teams like the Thunder are starting to mutate it a little bit, where you got 2 bigs with 3 guards. But then you got teams like the Spurs, on the other hand, that don't really need to run 2 bigs because Wemby's impact on both sides and just his presence alone, offensively and defensively. Like offensively, he's pretty much an almost automatic bucket when you see him around the rim. He doesn't have to jump. He can just catch it and just throw the ball in pretty much for the most part. Now, the thing is with Wemby, you don't want to make him have to be around the rim too much because that's going to probably lead to more injuries the more physical he has to play. So when you have 4 guards and they're all ridiculously good advantage creators like Stephon Castle, like Dylan Harper, like De'Aaron Fox, it's going to be very tough to really guard. Which is kind of a reason why the Thunder kind of struggle with them with all the defense that they do have. But a lot of their defenders are not the greatest offensive players. So when the Spurs have really a guy that can take their man one-on-one pretty much at every position, which is kind of what the Thunder want to do, it's just the Spurs are kind of doing it at a higher level. And instead of just being guards, they're pretty much all point guards that also can play really good defense. And it works really, really well. Now, the thing is, this is something that's been going on for a little while. I'm going to use an example. Eric Spoelstra. Now, Eric Spoelstra, there's been a couple coaches that use small ball, but it's not been a lot of coaches that use it the same way as Eric Spoelstra. Eric Spoelstra is a clear example with this outdated small ball lineups. Now, the thing is, what I'm saying is, Eric Spoelstra, when it comes to small ball lineups, it's been a lot of small ball lineups. You could even argue it was small ball lineups before him, but he's probably like one of the coaches that was from that era when he was first started and still does it to this day. But wrong personnel being main issue for years with the way Bam switches. Now, the way I'm saying that, Bam is a ridiculous defender. But the thing is, with the way the Heat play, especially if we want to do those 4 undersized guys and then you having Bam, when Bam is switching onto guards, what a lot of teams will do is they'll switch Bam and just give the big the ball where they'll now have a guard and it's pretty much either a free board or free point. And that is what I mean by the wrong personnel. And also, when it comes to those Heat teams, they don't really have any real guard advantage creators, but his drive and kick system, in theory, subsidizes that fact. Now, when you look at the Thunder, when you look at the Spurs, they are pretty much built perfectly to play that similar small ball lineup where you don't really have a small ball because you actually have two bigs or a big. And any lineup that really has Wemby is not really a small ball lineup because he's so tall with such a crazy wingspan that a lot of guys just don't want to get into the paint or really just want to drive to the paint, and they really try to avoid Wemby. And when you have somebody with that much of an advantage, it's when it gets tough. Now, the thing is, when it comes to the new meta, what I'm saying is, we're seeing two real obvious teams doing this. But when you look at teams like the Timberwolves can play a team like the Thunder and have a good game, because I've mentioned this in the offense and defense tier list videos I did, because they just have really good personnel up to top to bottom in terms of the guys that actually play. Other teams similar that have really good personnel, which is why a team like the Knicks can beat the Spurs, is because they have really good personnel top to bottom. Now, I do have my problems with Jalen Brunson and sometimes with his shot chuck, but the way that they play in comparison to the way the Cavs, say, for instance, where Donovan Mitchell may be a similar shot chuck, they have a personnel that kind of fits Jalen Brunson in the way he wants to shot chuck, so they have a lot of people that will be able to go for rebounds when you think of like the Josh Harts, even though Giannis is a very good hustle player, but you got guys like Mitchell Robinson that is one of the best offensive rebounders in the entire league, where the Cavs, I kind of mentioned this in the defense video, they just don't really have that. Now, it's a real interesting thing when it comes to the Spurs and Thunder, because the thing that really makes it nice to me is a lot of people in recent times have been complaining about how these teams all play the same. The Spurs and the Thunder have very, very similar play styles, but you cannot tell me the way that their team is built is similar to how the Timberwolves is built. But you could say they do play similarly. Hopefully, the fact that these two teams have kind of just went away from just building their teams around wings, where in history, you could argue wings is the kind of way that you want to build your team. But nowadays, with the way that these two teams are building their teams, more teams may see this and be like, maybe we just need to just go and get as many guards as we can and just get a big. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully that is not what happens. Hopefully what happens is we have teams that are built like the Spurs and the Thunder. Then we have teams that are built like the Rockets. Then we have teams that are built like the Nuggets. Then you have teams that are built like the Timberwolves. Then you have teams that are built like the Knicks. So hopefully we can get a lot of top teams that continually keep building their teams differently, so that the league can just stay interesting or get more interesting. I do think that there's some gripes within the league right now in terms of the scoring is just too easy, which is why that Spurs Thunder game when they first played in that cup was so entertaining, because it was actually a lot of stops being played, and you could see the impact of Wemby when he came into the game and when he was out the game, and you can see how good these teams are. Now, if you want to get into a conversation of how good Shai has been to make it seem like this team is a genuine all-time team on both sides of the ball, that's a top for another video. But defensively, you cannot argue with me about this Thunder team being an all-time team. Offensively, you still have your issues, which is why come playoff time, they may have their issues still when they play certain teams. But for the most part, there's a new meta in the league, and a lot of these teams are not going to get the grain when it comes to these wings. And the two teams I really use as the main examples are the Spurs and the Thunder. If y'all do want more of these discussion videos, I just did the box scores ruining sports video. Y'all like that? Y'all enjoyed that a lot, so I'm gonna try to get y'all more of these discussion videos. I got a lot in the pantry, so just let me know if y'all do want more. But yeah, without further ado, man, I'm not gonna make this video too long. Let me know what else y'all want me to make videos on. I'm trying to include as much as I can on the sports. Like I said in the other videos, I've been really enjoying watching me some football. Not talking about NFL. NFL playoffs is right around the corner, so I got a lot of content for y'all boys coming. It may be actually coming out by the time that this video is being uploaded, but for the most part, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, all that good stuff out the way. Without further ado, man, it's your boy Fitz. I'm out of here.
Tell them to bring me my money. Yeah!